Kind of a reaction video to that How the World Works guy. It's kind of hard to provoke a real response from him, so no point in responding, I guess. But anyway, he's made a video, just basically trashing Joe Biden. Like that'll make some kind of, like that means something to somebody. Because he didn't say 5 to 7 years, instead he said 5 to 6 years or 4 to 5 years ago. But whatever, after whatever, just nitpicky stuff, really. And then his other big complaint is that he's talking about imagine a world where, everybody goes to college and, we don't burn oil and all this other stuff, and that's like a sin. You can't do that imagining thing. I mean, that's a terrible crime, And the biggest complaint, I guess, in his video was something about, the fact that they're, Biden was saying incremental change is no good, and, we're going to do something, and we're doing more than that, and, like somehow that's, his argument is, I guess, is that the status quo is working just fine. Reaganomics, voodoo economics work just fine, and we don't need to change a thing. What a joke. I guess underlying all of this is some kind of gripe that he does show again Obama's huge deficits. Obama, the guy who's been president for like, what, 4 months? It's such a joke. Those deficits are all made out of catastrophe. That's all. Catastrophe that was built up over a couple of 3 decades worth of bad policy on the part of both parties. And, this playing the blame game, who's more to blame? Well, obviously the Republicans were in power more, so let's blame them. But what's the point? It's bad policy on both parties' part. Taxing and spending is more rational than borrowing spending. And, McCain wouldn't have done any better. And McCain would be facing the same problem. He would have been stuck with the legacy of the bank bailout and the policies that were initiated. Policies that would be, once you start them, how are you going to stop them? How, what you just throw, only do half the investment and guarantee failure of the policy? Or should you at least, go for it? If you're gonna invest $4 trillion, you might as well invest $8 trillion, because it's bad policy, and things are going to blow up with $4 trillion just as fast as they're going to blow up with $8 trillion of printed money. So it's doomed policy. The fact that Obama is, playing the same game. He's playing a Republican game. He's not playing a Democrat game. He's not playing some kind of socialist game. He's not playing and undo the mechanisms that got us into this mess game. He left the same jackasses in power, the same kind of Fed policy is in place that McCain would be endorsing. And what's the prospect that, McCain can talk all this talk, cut. This doesn't happen. It never happens. They always talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And they always want to cut the taxes before they cut the spending. What he was going to have at least $500 billion worth of tax cuts to that. He gave it to the working class. Big fucking difference, right? It's still would have been borrowed money either way. So it's just stupid to argue this crap, especially when we're not even facing a midterm election for another year. So it's just bullshit. I don't know what the point of it is. I don't know who gets convinced one way or another by this kind of nonsense. So why don't you deal with the real problem, which is the consolidation of wealth? Why don't you come up with some sort of argument that explains how we're going to pay back all this money? Who's going to do all this work? Why don't you tell America that it's basically your plan, Mr. How the World Works, that all the working people are going to somehow be more productive than Chinamen. That's right, that somehow they're going to work more hours and create more exportable product than the Chinese. We're going to outcompete them somehow. Because that's the only way out of this. That's the only way that money can be paid back. Is Americans have to become incredibly productive workers, and they can be so productive that the rich people who own the capitalist system can glean huge profits off their labor. And it's the only way that money gets paid back by your policy. So we either tax the rich, We either change this wealth equation where 10% of the people own more than the 90%, or we find a way to force Americans to work for a hamburger a day. And that's it. Those are the two choices. So that's the only thing you got to convince somebody of, is what camp do you want to live in? What camp are you part of? The one that wants to exploit labor, or the one that wants to reward labor? Because that's what it comes down to. Yeah, I mean, it's the Democrats are at least closer to that ideal. So I guess I could just turn this into some sort of argument for some basic themes that underlie capitalism. You know, obviously we can't be bailing out free markets. It's no longer a free market if you're free to fail, and there's no penalty for failure. Then obviously people have the wrong incentives if they get bailed out. You know, then the money goes to all the wrong places. You know, so that doesn't work. So if you're going to regulate a free market, you got to regulate it right. And creating a bunch of financial instruments to you know, keep revaluating and marketing debt is just stupid. You know, the stock market's got to reflect productive labor, not how much debt we've traded back and forth. I mean, we start, you know, measuring our gross domestic product based on how many times we transfer money back and forth instead of how many times we actually do something productive. There's no fucking point, because the number's always going to be bogus and a lie. So anyway, it's that whole wealth thing is the underlying theme, really. But there's this underlying argument, like this is Stefbot guy. I'll hit the anarchist a little bit. He gripes that, you know, this all went to hell the minute they passed the income tax. And Ron Paul has the same argument. I mean, that to them, the progressive tax that taxes the richest people in the world, that's the evil tax. The rest of the taxes, well, they might be bad, but they're not the ones they're going to worry about. The one that really scares them is this income tax idea. And we can see from the historical fact that it's when the income tax was cut is when the deficits got out of control. And that America sort of flourished when there was a very high tax rate on income at the highest levels back in the 70s. People were doing okay then. A man could support his family with just one job. You know, middle class was thriving, and now it's non-existent. You know, now everybody's competing for how low we'll go. You know, will we go $12 an hour, $10 an hour? I mean, what's a man going to get paid for his work in this country? It's getting pretty dismal with the average wages, where the average wage is going. You know, and when it comes to education, I mean, yeah, obviously we shouldn't be subsidizing educations in finance or some other kind of bullshit. The only education the government should be subsidizing are science education, something that can actually have some hope of being productive. Teaching people how to be crooks and shysters doesn't make much sense. All right, but anyway, back to this Stefbot thing and the income tax. You know, that's not the, you know, the whole point is we have to balance the system. And, you know, they gripe too about how government does everything wrong, and it's always private industry is so much more competitive. I'd just like to see that blueprinted somewhere. I mean, I'm not saying it isn't true, but let's blueprint why government business fails. Why when government does something, it doesn't do it as efficiently, and where the money goes. Where's the inefficiency? Because it really isn't that complicated. If you own a business, what are you going to do? You're going to hire people to run the business, right? And then you're going to hire employees to do the work. And what the liabilities the government carries is the liability that it pays workers. Now, they might not deserve what they're getting paid, and I might agree with that. Their union might be way too powerful, and I might agree that it needs to be put in its place, so to speak. But what's the rest of it? It's just hiring somebody to manage. Is it your argument, you people, that government can't pick somebody to run a business better than a private industry picks somebody to run a business? You know, better than a private holder of the company? I mean, bullshit. I mean, it's just nonsense. There's nothing intrinsically broken about the idea that government can run a business. It's just that they're running them under different rules. Government can't pollute. Government can't do a lot of things because there's a lot more scrutiny. the public knows a lot more about the business practices of the open government-run business than private industry is going to allow people to know. And again, it comes down to labor. The United States government is not going to hire Chinese men at 70 cents a day to deliver your mail. No, it's going to hire Americans to do it for a living wage. And maybe that's an obscenity to you, but it isn't to me. Who's getting rich off the postal service? Go find where the money goes. There's no millionaires being made delivering mail. So if you think some competitive business who's going to be paying CEOs, $10 million a year and then paying shareholders millions and billions of dollars a year is somehow going to be more competitive, that somehow they're going to make that money without exploiting somebody, come on. They're either going to screw the consumer or they're going to screw the worker. But that's the only way they can do that. That's the only way they can pay that high price of overhead. Out of time, damn it.